to introduce Rabbi Druin.
Okay.
And I think you'll find this very interesting.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
That's good? Okay. Since I'm going to be speaking for more than just a few moments, if you're standing, you're going to feel what I feel like standing, so you might as well sit. Come, Rabbi, find a seat. Feel at home. Okay. Our sages tell us that before they would begin any type of Torah discourse, a lecture, a class, they would always open up their lesson with what they called in Aramaic, milta de b'dichuta, which loosely translated means a word of humor, to loosen up the crowd, especially when the speaker was a new speaker and you didn't know him. So the story goes that once there was a rabbi, and this rabbi became very famous, not because he had really what to say, or actually anyone was interested in what he had to say, but because when he would get up to speak, he would finish his speech in 7 minutes. Never failed. And it became a marvel for a rabbi. Have you ever seen such a thing? For a rabbi to get up, start, and finish in 7 minutes? It became a minhag, a custom in this shul, that whenever the rabbi would get up to speak, everyone put on their stopwatch to see this phenomenon. It became so well known that people came traveling from far and wide to see this. And every Friday night, the shul, the sanctuary was full. People came to see and this marvel. 30 years, he never failed. But one time he gets up to speak, and you hear all the stopwatches, everyone's getting ready, and he starts to speak, and it's 7 minutes, and then it turns into 8. By time 9, people are banging their watch. What happened is that they're 10 minutes, and it's 15 minutes, and he keeps on speaking. 20 minutes, people didn't like what he had to say in the first place. People start to leave. By the time it's 45 minutes, half the shul is not there. Eventually, he finishes. The gabbai comes running up to the rabbi and says, "Rabbi, what happened? 30 years, you never failed. What happened today?" He says, "You don't understand. There was a terrible accident." He says, "Accident? What happened?" He says, "Shlot, I explain." He says, "You see, every time I get up to speak, I take a little candy and I put it in my mouth. And when I finish sucking on the candy, I stop talking. But this time it was an accident. I took a button." So, if you hear me talk, taram tam tam. Okay, if you hear me talk a little bit too long, say, "Take out the button, take out the button." Okay. Okay. So, my name is Rabbi Druin, Rabbi Moshe Druin. I live in Miami. Thank God I'm married. 11 children. Oy, wow, I get different comments on that one. Baruch Hashem, 8 grandchildren, of which the 8th one was just born last week. Baruch Hashem. And I've been a Sofer, a scribe now for 33 years. In fact, my father is a scribe, my son is training, my son-in-law is a scribe. But what's very interesting in the setup of our family scribal business is that traditionally, to become a Sofer, a scribe, it's usually a tradition and an art and a trade that is taught by a father to a son. That's always the way it's happened. In this case, I actually was my father's teacher. So I've been a scribe now for 33 years. My father has been a scribe now for 27. Although everything I'll be teaching here tonight I get from him, as he's a master educator, a philosopher, a professor. He has it all and knows it all. And I'm still graveling, learning from him. But the art of being a scribe, I started with him. Now, the word scribe in Hebrew is translated as the word, does anyone know how you say a scribe in Hebrew? The word is sofer. And what's the root of that word? Where does that word derive from? So we know that Hebrew is based on roots. Every Hebrew word has a root. And the word sofer is derived from the same word as the word sefer, Torah, sefer. So the sofer writes the sefer. There's yet another root explanation of that word. And that is sipur, which means to tell a story. The original scribes, going back 2,000 years ago, were not only glorified calligraphers, they were also storytellers. So we are reenacting that concept of not only being very well rehearsed and capable with the handwriting, but also in the ability to teach it and inspire and share about what it is to take a piece of animal skin and transform it into a Sefer Torah. But before I get into telling you about letters and making Torahs and fixing Torahs and what you have here, I'm just going to share with you just a little bit about how I became a scribe myself. I was raised in Israel from the age of 6, and not coming from an observant family, I'm an artist. So from a very young age, I would always be drawing scenery, cartoons, and all. I can do it all. I was probably about 9 years old, and I came by a sheet of the Hebrew letters as they appear in the Torah, the unique style of those letters. And being an artist and having an eye for beautiful art, I fell in love with those letters. So while everyone in the class was scribbling scribbles, I was scribbling Hebrew letters. And it was only many years later, when I was now in yeshiva, and I was, again, the artist for the yeshiva, drawing all the cartoons, making funny faces of all the rabbis and doing all that stuff, my friends would tell me, Moshe, you should really become the ultimate artist. Become a Sofer. I said, nah, but for that stuff, you got to be holy. Give it a try. You might make it. And when I started, I was like a fish in water. Within a very short while, I picked it up, and I was on my way to become a scribe. Now, here comes your first trivia question, which I'm going to throw out at you. There'll be a number of these throughout the evening. There are a number of items that must be written by hand. They cannot be printed. Press the button, comes out from the printer. Which are the 4 items, according to Judaism, that have to be written on parchment by a scribe with the quill in the same fashion? So I gather, it's not hard to guess. The first one, it's right in front of us over here. That's the Torah. 1 down, 3 to go. Mezuzah is correct. That little scroll, okay, that goes on the door. By the way, a footnote little joke. I'm sure you all heard this story, but if you haven't, it's a good one to remember. Once there was a lady comes to the scribe and says, please check my mezuzah. So she hands it to him, and he gives the case. And he opens up the case, and there was nothing inside. So he asks her, where's the mezuzah? Oh, the instructions, those I threw out. Okay, so the mezuzah is not the case. The mezuzah is the little scroll that has the paragraph of the Shema and the Vahayim Shemoah. Has to be written by hand, not in Korea or in the West Bank by Arabs. It has to be written by a Jew. And I'm not saying that for nothing, because we have found those being written in Korea and in the Arab town, whatever. It has to be written in a kosher way. So that's 2. A Torah, a mezuzah. What else? Tefillin is correct. Well, we bind our arms and our heads, we wear them. Inside are little pieces of parchment that have the various paragraphs that relate to tefillin. 3 down. What's the last one? We only use it and read it once a year. Megillat Esther is correct. Okay? Now the question is, when a scribe, a sofer, begins the training, which of those 4 would be the first that they would go about training and writing? So, okay. Megillah. Who says tefillin? Mezuzah. Torah. Well, I'm going to give you the outline to the answer, and you may come up with the answer by yourself. There are many thousands of laws that a sofer has to train and study and learn and get qualified in before he can embark on any of this. The one Jewish law that actually proceeds and, I suppose, really holds the most weight when a scribe is training and practicing is how to be so perfect that you become someone who does not make mistakes. Now, here I am standing here in front of you, telling you you're looking at someone who doesn't make mistakes. Oy, I'm biting my tongue. But it's true. That is what we are training for. Why? What's the big deal? So you make a mistake. No. Because we are about to write something that will have ultimately God's name in it. And to write God's name and make a mistake in that, I'm not going to bore you with all the lengthy details of how horrible and terrible it will be if a scribe wrote and made a mistake writing God's name. So all the practice that goes into primarily is to ensure that when we come down eventually to write God's name, we got it down packed and we're not going to make a mistake. So which would be the first that a scribe would be training to write? Now it makes sense. It's the Megillah. Why? The Megillah does not have God's name in it. So you can write as many Megillas as you want and make as many mistakes, and you will not desecrate God's name. Now, back to my story. So many scribes in training to become a scribe will write 2, 3, 7, 8, 30 Megillot before whoever's training them says, I think you're ready to embark and go on to writing your first mezuzah, which is the next stage, and then you can get tested and so on. I happen to have written my first Megillah, and it was really good. And those who were inspecting it were very impressed. But there was a side note of a problem. At that time, as I mentioned, I was living in Israel, self-sufficient, supporting myself, and if anything I wanted, I had to come up with the money myself. In those days, I was becoming close to Chabad, and I wanted to travel for Pesach to New York to visit the Rebbe. A ticket in those days cost $850 to make the round trip. I didn't have any money, so I had to go and work different things to make it. So I was hoping to sell a Megillah. Now a Megillah, you can go ahead and buy one, $850. You can actually walk in and get them for $1,500, for $2,000, for $3,000. And by which everyone told me that my Megillah looked so good, I assumed I was going to get a pretty penny, maybe have an extra little bit of cash when I go. So I start showing my Megillah around to potential buyers. And as soon as they heard this was my first one, I'll give you $95 for it. What? They said, yeah, when you write your third or fifth, then come to me, I'll give you more. But for whatever reason, and I still till today don't clearly understand it, but if you are a beginner scribe, they're not offering you much. This one offered me $120. I wasn't getting anywhere. So I started making photocopies and sending it around. Maybe someone will see it and be interested. I get a call from somebody in Tel Aviv, and he tells me, it looks good, but if he sees it and he likes it, he'll give me $250. And that's the most I'm being offered. So what can I do? I asked permission from the head of the yeshiva to go and travel to Tel Aviv. And I'm on the bus. Here's the story. I'm on the bus. In the middle of the ride, someone gets on the bus, and he sits down next to me. And he looks at me and says to me, are you a yeshiva bacher? I said, I am. He says, so if you're a yeshiva bacher and it's the middle of the day, what are you doing outside of yeshiva? You're bunking, you're going to the beach. What are you doing? I said, no, I'm a Sofer. You're a Sofer. What do you write? I wrote a Megillah. What are you doing? I'm trying to sell it. Do you have it? I do. Can I see it? You can. And I take it out and I show it to him. And he says, oh, this is gorgeous. How much do you want for it? I didn't blink. $850. He didn't blink. He opens up his wallet. This is in Israel. Takes out $850 US and gives it to me. Takes the Megillah, gets off the next stop. And I never saw him again. Well, you can bet I was there on that plane and I make it to the States. Now the story, well, that part ended, but there is somewhat of a continuation. So I'm now in New York, and as a result of my teachers who were inspecting my work, they said I am ready to now embark and write my first mezuzah scroll. And if that mezuzah is now inspected by a number of other scribes and rabbis and all who qualify in inspecting such things, and if I pass that, then I will get what they call in Yiddish the zettel, the note, whereby I can go and get tested as a scribe, and with that I'd get the stamp. I'm on my way. So I go and write my first mezuzah scroll. Now, I have written tens of thousands of mezuzahs. It takes me an hour and a quarter, and I'm really good and fast at it. This mezuzah took me 7 hours. Not because I was anywhere slow at that time, but rather, I was being so careful. This was the one that I was going to be inspected on. And when I finished writing it, I checked it, and then I checked it again, and checked it again, until I was perfectly satisfied that I got it right. And I come over to the scribe who was going to look at it, and while I'm not really good at names, because I meet hundreds of thousands of people by the nature of what I do, his name I'll never forget. His name was Rabbi Elishevitz. He lives in New York. And he takes my mezuzah, and he says to me, I'll look at it soon, and I'll call you and let you know. He calls me back a little later, and he says to me, Moshe, I have good news and I have bad news. I said, okay, what's the good news? He says, the good news is, for a first mezuzah, it's gorgeous. It looks like you've been writing for 20 years. It's impressive, it's beautiful. I said, oh, thank you, I appreciate it. What's the bad news? He says, the bad news is it's pasul. It's not kosher, nothing you can do with it. What are you talking about? He said, come and see. What do you mean, come and see? I ran to his place. He gives it back to me and says, here, take a look. I read it from beginning to end. I didn't see anything. He says, read it again. I read it again. He made me read it 3 times. And I finally said to him, you're pulling my leg, right? You know, you don't want me to be too inflated with pride that I'm so good, right? He shows me I missed a letter. I was 18 at the time. They say cowboys, I mean scribes don't cry. But I burst out crying. Not too much because I was caught with a mistake, but it really hit me. Here, I'm meant to be writing a mezuzah, not for myself, but possibly for you. And you may put this mezuzah on your door. And it's meant to be a source of a blessing for your home. And if after all my checking and inspection and being told that there's a problem, I couldn't see it, maybe God was giving me a sign that I should get out while I'm ahead. Maybe this is something that I should not be. And I was really upset about it, that how could I have really missed it in such a way that I was so blind to such an obvious mistake? But what happened next, I'll never forget either. He put his hand on my shoulder, and he said to me, Moshe, you're going to be a good scribe, a good Sofer. I said, what makes you say that? Look, I couldn't see the mistake after you told me, after you... He said, you should know. And here comes a very important lesson, really for all of us. It says that God did not give the Torah to the angels, but rather to human beings. Why? Because angels don't make mistakes. They don't need the Torah. Human beings do make mistakes. But the other difference between angels and human beings, that while angels don't make mistakes, they also cannot do teshuvah. They can never repent and say they're sorry. That never exists in their vocabulary. And yet a person who makes a mistake, and he feels bad enough about it, he could say he's sorry, he can repent, he could try to fix it. He said to me, had I turned around and said, oh, I made a mistake, don't worry, I'll write another one. He said, then I would have worried about you. If it didn't bother you, that's a problem. But the fact that it bothered you so much, here's the note, you're good to go. And here I am to tell this story. So I've been a Sofer. Now, one other little footnote that was added to that point, there is yet many other laws that pertain to writing and inspecting and so on. But when a Sofer writes a mezuzah, tefillin, even a Torah, it cannot be sold to another person unless one, and in many cases 2 other scribes, inspect it before it's sold. Even if you are the master scribe of the universe, when you write it, it cannot be sold until 2 other scribes will take a look at it. And I always wondered about that. In fact, the source for this concept is in a book that many of you may have heard of. It's called The Ethics of Our Fathers, Pirkei Avot. And in that book, it talks about all the morals and ethics and values of Judaism. It was written 2,000 years ago. I highly recommend it if you have a chance to read it. It says there a very strange statement. It says the following. It says, a person should never trust themselves until the day they die. Now that's a very far-fetched statement to make. And I always wondered about that. But in fact, at that moment, I realized the answer. Because the truth is, when we are born, we are all born with PhDs. Do you know you all have a PhD? Do you know what that is even? But you have it already. A PhD, you have a master's degree, you're a brilliant guy. We are masters in being able to see the faults of everybody around us. We're really good at it. Get to know someone within a very short while. This is the way you walk, this is the way you talk, the way you sneeze. We know everything about you. But there's only one person we have a difficulty in analyzing and identifying the problem and faults. And who's that? Yourselves. And therefore, right after that statement, our sages tell us every human being should get themselves a good spouse, a good rabbi, a good friend. Why? If someone has to criticize you and point out your faults, hopefully they'll do it in a nice way. That's what it's about. So the truth is, when we write mezuzahs, because of by the way, in the scribal world, I have a nickname. My nickname is Eagle's Eyes. I see everyone else's mistakes. You bring me someone else's mezuzah, I'll point, I don't even blink. Boom, it's, how'd you see it? I see it. I'm a master in seeing everyone else's mistakes. But surely the lesson was so powerful to me that as great as I might be in seeing it, I still need someone else to look and see my own. Okay, so what does a Sofer do? What's the job of a scribe? A scribe does not write letters, and this is not a book. Shall I repeat that? A scribe does not write letters, and this over here is not a book. I'll prove it. You still go to school? They haven't kicked you out yet? Good. Okay. No, that joke. Okay. That was a joke. What's your favorite subject? Math. Okay. When you went to school, or go to school, or when you go to school, you pick up your math book, and when you finish the math book lesson, you take it and you go, mwah, and give it a big kiss. No? Whoops. Sorry. Okay. No, you don't kiss right. How about geography? When you finish your geography lesson, you pick up the book, and you give it a big hug and dance around the room with it. That's why we don't write letters, and this is not a book. Because if it was a book, you don't go kissing it and dancing with it and hugging it. Could you imagine every time you came home and you saw your father and he's hugging his newspaper? Dad, what you doing? Oh, it's my newspaper. It would be weird, right? So what are we really doing? Let's start with the following. Does anyone know how you translate the word letter into Hebrew? How do you say the word letter in Hebrew? The word is ot. Can you all say it? Okay, you've learned lesson. Have a great day now. Okay, I was joking. The Hebrew word for letter is ot. But now here comes the fun part. If someone stopped and asked you, what does the word ot in Hebrew mean in English? What would you say? That's what you would think. Well, guess again. Ot in Hebrew means a sign. Ot in Hebrew, if you look in the dictionary, also means wonder. If you look in that same dictionary, it'll tell you that the word ot also means magic. Somewhere in the footnotes, it'll also say it means letters too. It says a Sofer is writing otiyot. We are writing signs. We are writing wonders. This is Jewish magic. Something as powerful as that, whew, you kiss, you hug, you celebrate, you dance. It has the power of who you are. It's not just a math book. So what we're going to be trying to share a little bit with you tonight is a little bit more about the making of these letters, how these scrolls are made, ultimately what can go wrong, why do they need to be fixed, and ultimately we'll talk a little bit more about your Torahs. And by the way, from now onwards, if you have any questions or things I'm saying that are not clear, raise your hand. I'd love to hear it. Now, in making these letters, in this, what we call a Sefer Torah, does anyone know when was the first time that the Jewish people actually witnessed and saw these Hebrew letters? When was the first time we saw it? Getting close. I mean, within the range. Where? Sinai. On Mount Sinai. God gives Moses the tablets. They see the tablets, and voila, there's this new and strange and interesting type of otiyot. Actually, one of the ways we understood that these letters were magical was because the nature of how it appeared on these tablets was magical. You see, if you take a stone, so you can either write on it, but the letters on the tablets were not written. They were not edged or carved onto the stone. They were actually hollowed, chiseled through and through the stone. So if I would have lifted up the tablet, you would have been able to see me through the shapes of the letters. Okay, I'm going to say something that you're not going to understand. Funny enough, neither do I. If I had a piece of paper, okay, here, just give me this orange, just to give a visual. Okay, thank you. So if this was the tablet, right, and the first words are Anochi. Aleph starts here, right? We write from right to left. So this side, follow me here. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, it's writing this way. And you'd look at it, you would see the letters hollow through and through. Here's Anochi. My fingers are holding it. And yet, if I turn those tablets around, you would still read Anochi starting from here, through and through the stone. Go ahead. I don't understand that either. Another very interesting thing that appeared in the tablets, if there was a tablet Okay, and this is the stone. Does anyone know what letter that is? This is the stone, by the way. This is stone. This is part of the tablet, and here's a letter. Can anyone see what letter that is? How about if I go like this? What letter is it now? It's the final mem, right? So all this is hollow. Do you see a problem? The first time they saw the mem, it was actually floating. The middle piece was floating in midair. When we draw our mems, we don't draw a mem with a little connector here. We draw it in the reverse ultimately, but we're drawing it the same way we saw it. And that was the hollow was the shape. Okay, that was just a little footnote to it. Now, when it comes to actual understanding the meaning of these letters, there are many, many ways to understand and comprehend the significance of these letters. Now, surely you can open up a Chumash and you can start reading Rashi and commentaries, modern and contemporary explanations to the letters and the words. But there are many other ways of studying the Hebrew letters. Has any of you ever heard of what we call Gematria? Gematria is an Aramaic word which basically means the numerical value of Hebrew letters, where every Hebrew letter equals a number. Aleph would be 1, Bet would be 2, Gimel 3, what would be Yud? That's 10, Kaf would be 20, until you finally get to Kuf, which is 100, and Taf is 400. And now there are those scholars that when they open up Torah, they're not reading words. They're reading mathematical equations. They're putting the letters and words and sentences, adding them up, and there are many styles of mathematical equations that go into here, where Aleph and Taf switches, and there's a fascinating pieces, to the point where, in fact, if you open up Kabbalah and you start to read some of the pieces related to letters and Jewish customs, you would actually be more than surprised of how many concepts we do as Jews is based on the numerical value of letters. That's where we derive the whole concept of our observance. And in fact, so much of our belief is based on concepts related to the numbers. I'll share with you only one very quickly. So in the beginning, God creates the heavens and the earth, right? I'm sure you all are aware that there are many names of God, right? Anyone want to shoot out some names? Right? Shinal Yud. Which one else? Elokim, Yukevavke, Kel, Kadosh, Tzvakot. There's a whole list of famous names, secondary names, hidden names, which is the name. It's the name that we normally don't pronounce. It's the letters Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, right? We call it Hashem, the name. That is the ultimate powerful name representing God's power in the universe. What is the second in command name? The name that comes in nice, strong, but second in place. That's the name we call Elokim, right? That is the one more famous and common, but that's only number 2, recognized by all as not the name, but a good second in place. Does anyone know the first 3 words of the Torah? Bereshit, bara, Elokim. In the beginning, Elokim created the world. I'll put it to you this way. Could you imagine on the day of the president's inauguration, and the head judge, whatever, stands up there and says, I'd like to call upon the President of the United States, and up jumps the Vice President. I'm here. And he said, no. Maybe in 4 years or 8 years, we're waiting now for the President. Oh, no, he's away on vacation in Hawaii right now, so he's not here. What? During the campaign, if the President doesn't want to be there and send in the Vice President, that's fine. Inauguration, taking the oath, he's not there? What am I missing? So you want to say when God was putting the pieces together and he made and planned, this is it, Bereshit, it's the beginning. Where was God? On vacation? And actually, if you look through the entire 7 days of creation, only the name Elokim appears. This whole powerful name that exists in the Torah everywhere wasn't there. You turn the page to the next chapter, And suddenly, badam, he's out of vacation. It says, Vayi bayom barot Hashem Elokim. Suddenly Hashem shows up, and you keep on reading through the next chapters. He's just piling in his name. He's getting to work. What happened at the beginning? It's unbelievable. I'm going to try to give a 3-4 hour class in about 2 minutes. So bear with me on this. I'm going to do the best I can. Judaism does believe that this world was created through the attribute of nature. We do believe in the power of nature. And this is what God intended to begin with. Not this hoo-ha, dee-dee-dee-dee, spiritual, out there. We're talking about a physical, natural world. And there's no conflict between believing in a God and believing that there's nature. Because we say God created nature and it's all part of the plan. Okay, well that's cute. How do you know that? Aha, here we go. If you go and take the name Elohim, right? So I'm going to write it up over here quickly. There's the Hey. Okay, Aleph equals 1. Lamed equals, we're doing good. Hey equals 5. Yud equals, Mem equals, what do we have? Come on. 86, okay. And we're saying that on the day that God created this world, He was creating it through the attribute of nature. How do you say the nature in Hebrew? It's called Ha-Teva. Hey equals 5. Tet equals 9. Bet is 2. Ayin is 70. What do you have? It was the power of Elohim that created nature. Only once nature was completed, only then did God come and infuse this world with an attribute that was higher than nature. Now, I'm not sure if any of you are aware, actually, what is the one attribute that does not exist in nature? Something that we all on a certain level have, and yet in nature it does not exist. That is called mercy. I lived in South Africa for many years. When the lion goes and catches the springbok, you never hear the springbok saying, "Oh, please, have mercy on me, count to 10 and give me a second chance." No, you're dinner, right? If the tree doesn't get enough water at the right time, it dies. Oh, give me an extension of 10 days. You're finished. That concept of mercy does not exist in nature. That is something what we call lemala min hateva, above nature. And that is what actually the essence of God really is not a natural God where you get punished, rewarded. There's something that is much greater, and that's mercy. Okay, we're going to continue. Has any of you ever heard of... try this one. There we go. Okay. Something called tagim. Tagim are the little crowns that you see on top of the letters. Okay? So when you have a letter, you have the lines, and I'll talk soon about these lines as well. If you look closely in the Torah, all Torahs are scored with lines in them. And soon we're going to talk about the lines themselves. But give me a letter. Let's say, we'll take the letter Gimel, for example. Okay, so the Gimel is over here. And on top, there's going to be 3 little crowns. Some letters have 3. Some letters have 1. One letter has 2. And these crowns appear when you open up any single Torah, no matter where they come around the world. You will always see these little crowns. Now, by the way, if a letter does not have a crown, it's still 100% kosher. It's the decorations. It says that this is something that God has put onto these letters to beautify them, but they have, like anything else in Judaism, a lot of meaning. Now, to illustrate just a little bit about the significance of these crowns, has any of you ever heard of a very famous sage by the name of Rabbi Akiva? Okay? So who was Rabbi Akiva? He lived approximately 2,000 years ago. He was one of those people who actually started learning Aleph Bet at the age of 40. When he was 40 years old, you showed him an aleph and showed him a bet. He did not know the difference. He was a shepherd, illiterate, couldn't read or write, nothing. It's actually one of the more famous love stories in our history. He goes and falls in love with who? None other than the daughter of the wealthiest person living in Israel at the time. His name was Kalba Savua. He falls in love with the daughter called Rachel. Rachel comes to the father and says, Dad, Mazel Tov, I'm engaged. To who? To Akiva. Oh, Akiva the scholar in yeshiva. No. Oh, Akiva the banker, the big man. No. The businessman, the lawyer, the attorney, no. Who? The shepherd. He blew a fuse, and he basically turned around to his daughter and says, you have to make a choice. It's me or him. And if you choose him, I'm disowning you. She saw in him something that no one else saw, and she chose Akiva. She encourages him to go out and learn, which he does. And he comes back many years later, not only as a scholar, but actually as the leader of the generation, with tens of thousands of students following him. An unbelievable person. In fact, if ever you want to play the little trivia game of the top 10 greatest Jewish leaders of all time, Rabbi Akiva is in that list. We're talking about one of the greatest peoples of all time. The Talmud is full of him. The things that we say and sing and do come from this incredible mind. I'm not sure if any of you actually are aware of his end. It was extremely tragic. He was caught with 9 other great scholars and sages of that time, and they were tortured to death by the Romans. Rabbi Akiva's death, they actually took combs of metal, and they combed his skin, and he bled to death. And he was the one who cried out, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, and those were the last words on his lips as he passed away. In his lifetime, this Rabbi Akiva made the following statement. And he said that if, during his life, the only thing he would have taught would have been the lessons behind the crowns on top of the Hebrew letters, he would have not had enough time. He said if he dropped everything else and spent his time doing nothing else but teaching the meaning of those little crowns, his entire life would have not been enough to do so. That's how much there is to teach just on the significance and the meaning, comprehension behind these little crowns. I'm going to share with you only one example. Which is the tallest letter? The Lamed. Okay. Now, I'm going to take a detour for a moment with your permission. I'm going to share with you just something else, and I'm going to come back to the Lamed. So hold that thought. As I mentioned, we have lines in the Torah. Now, when you go to school and the teacher has lines on the board or you have lines in your notebook, where do you write your letters? Do you write your letters like this? Or like this? Where do you write your letters? On top or on the bottom? Always on the top. That's the way it is. In other words, the line becomes the base. How about when you write regular Hebrew? Okay, here's regular Hebrew. You always write your letters on top. Always. Every single language in the world uses the line as a base, other than Hebrew in the Torah. It is the only language out there that has the line and uses it as a ceiling to hang the letters from. So ask me a good question. Why? Good. I was hoping you would. Okay. So the answer goes like this. In Kabbalah, unfortunately I'm not sure if you know that word yet, but it will come your way one day. Kabbalah basically is the teachings, the mystical teachings of this world, of the universe, according to Torah, according to Judaism, where everything has a purpose and a meaning and an explanation. And in Kabbalah, amongst so many things, it actually talks about lines. It does talk about lines, and it says that in this world, there are 2 types of lines. There is a line that connects, and there's a line that divides. And it gives examples for both. And one of the examples that it gives to describe lines that divide, it says, the lines in the Torah. That's an example. And everyone says, huh? What's it dividing between? So it says, anything above the line represents the spiritual world. The world where the angels are, the souls, the seraphs, right? Anything under the line represents the physical world, nature. And where are our letters? Under the line. Now, this whole concept is actually based on a very famous midrash. Are you all familiar with what a midrash is? Ish? If not, now's a good time to ask. Okay. So in the midrash, it says the following story. It says that when God took the Jews out of Egypt, and the Jews were very excited because not only were they being freed from slavery, but they were going to come to Mount Sinai, they were going to get the Torah. This was the most incredible moment of their history and life. They were extremely excited. They counted 49 days. They come around the mountain. They prepare for 3 days. They can't wait for this Torah to be given. In fact, the one who was most excited was Moses. He was the big macher. He's going up the mountain. He goes up the mountain. Come on, God, give me the Torah. I can't wait. It says that even God was excited, and God's about to give the Torah, and Moses is about to receive the Torah, and a voice comes out and says, don't do it. And so God and Moses, look, who says don't do it? This was the moment. And the midrash says that the angels came around and said to God, you're going to do what? You're going to give your Torah to who? Don't do it. So God says, why not? Why not? You know what this Torah is? It has the secrets of the universe in it. It has all the explanation and meaning about what God is, about how to live. It's everything, the secrets of everything is in here. It's the most precious object in the whole world. And you said you're going to give it to who? To people? I don't know if any of you ever met people before. But in case you do, in case you bump into people, let me tell you what to expect. You see, people are very strange creatures. Today they say they love you. The next day, I don't like you anymore. Today, this is the best thing in the world. Next thing, it's boring. I love it. I dislike it. It's always, they're changing their mind. Why didn't you do it? It's his fault. It's the dog's fault. My grandmother, everyone's fault. Never themselves. They promise. They don't keep it. They have good intentions and then don't mean it. And they're going to go and respect and take care of a Torah? Who are you fooling? They'll say they love Torah, and the next day football's better. And then when they got into football, forget that, now it's baseball. They're changing their mind. Did I say Torah? I never said it. I did say it. I regret it. They're always changing their mind. The angel said, give the Torah to us. We understand it. We appreciate it. We will cherish it. We will know how to take care of it. So God said to Moses, do you want the Torah? And Moses says, yeah. So you answer them, he says to him. First of all, how do you address an angel? Your holiness, your greatness, your angelness. What do you say? So Moses turns around to the angels, and he says the following. He says, do you have parents? That's all he asked them. The angel says, parents? We're not born. We don't have parents. He said, I knew that, Moses said. But if you don't have parents, you can't fulfill the mitzvah in this Torah that says you got to honor your father and mother. You guys can't do it. Good point, Sonny. Never thought of that one. Can I ask you another question, says Moses. He says, were you ever slaves in Egypt? Angel said, us? Slaves? One whoosh of my wing, I wipe out of Egypt. What are you doing? I knew that, said Moses. But if you were never a slave, and you were never freed from slavery, how are you going to celebrate Passover? You can't do it. Didn't think of that one either, Sonny. Right? Moses proved to the angels two things. Number one, whenever you go ahead and you call your child an angel, no, they're not. No one's angels here. Don't fool yourself. Number two, even though we're not angels, as I mentioned earlier, the Torah was not given to angels because they don't make those mistakes, as you heard me say. It's only because we are those who can and will make mistakes, but we are the ones who can utilize this Torah to perfect and do teshuvah and repent and come back and do the right thing. We're the ones who can actually benefit from the Torah. And that's why, back to the lines, where are the Hebrew letters? Over the line, up in heaven. Lesson number one, you may possibly not even know the meaning, you may not even know how to read it, but by simply seeing that the letters exist under the line, the first lesson is, these letters are yours. It belongs to you. This is your gift. It belongs in this world, and it's for you to benefit. Okay, back to the lesson of the crowns. So, we have, as I mentioned earlier, the tallest letter. Which one is that? That's the Lamed. So we're going to go here and draw the Lamed. And the lamed is the letter that reaches above the line. All other letters are under the line. The lamed reaches above the line. But the top of the lamed is not the top of the Hebrew letter. On top of it, there are two crowns. Okay? Which one's taller? The right one is taller than the left. And there's a reason for that. And this is the lesson. It says that everything in this world has two sides to it. There's up and down, hot and cold, happy and sad, me and you, right? Everything. Everything has two sides to it. It says that also, in essence, God has two sides, which represented, as we said, God is ultimately the God of mercy. And then the flip side of the coin is Elohim, which represents judgment, this natural world. So when we pray, and when we hope, and when we aspire ourselves to be the greatest that we can be, we are always trying to both be kind, and we're praying that kindness should be bestowed upon us. Here comes the lesson of the crowns. It says that the right side represents kindness. The left side represents judgment and harshness. Now the truth is, we need both in life. If you had a teacher that was just so nice, that never asked you to do homework, and to pass the test was only 40%, and you can chew gum and eat in their class and never come to school, you know what? You'd never learn, right? If your parents only gave you junk to eat, who gets the cavities? It would be you, right? If someone always comes and pushes you, it's so easy to want to have only kindness. But the truth is, if sometimes we don't give a pach and tuchas to our kid, they don't grow up normal. They need to get occasionally that rebuke and that harshness. But surely we have to have a double measure of kindness and mercy. When it comes to the highest point of our Hebrew letters, the highest point is the right-hand crown. That's Oseh Shalom Bimromav, the one who brings peace up in heaven, will bring peace down in this world. It's the act of kindness. While we still have the left crown, it's not that there is no left side, that we shouldn't be harsh. Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself. Israel has to stand up and defend itself against Hamas. But we're always seeking ways of peace and mercy, even in the times of war, because that's what we've learned from these crowns. That a Jew, number one lesson is we have to be kind. And obviously, we also pray for kindness upon us as well. And this was one of those lessons that Rabbi Akiva taught us, the meaning of the crowns on top of the letters. There are many other pieces. By the way, has anyone ever heard of the book called Magic Eye? If not, I recommend you go out to, in those days, Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, you can go and get it. It's a book called Magic Eye. I know of two of them, but I believe there's many more already. It's a book that, when you look at the pictures, it looks like a monkey went ahead and took colors and then just doesn't look like anything. I'm not exaggerating what I'm about to tell you. The instructions say, take the page, any one of the pages in this book, bring it up to your nose, your eyes go blurred, and then you slowly take it away. And as your eyes refocus, you will see a 3D image inside those pictures. It's fascinating. Okay? Are you ready for this one, guys? Our Torah is a magic eye type of a book. You see, when we write these letters, these otiyot, the ink is black. The parchment is this off-white beige, right? So what are you reading? White on black or black on white? You're reading black on white. Guess again. There are those scholars that when they're looking at Torah, they're not reading the black. They are reading the shapes, the designs, the messages, the images that are on the white. And it has a whole new dimension that is not read in the normal way you are reading Torah. I'm going to give you only one glimpse into it. I'm going to draw one letter. Okay, so here's my line again. So here's the letter. You may call it out when you see which letter it is. What letter is that? The letter Pei. Now, normally, when you write the Pei, so here is the black. I'm going to color in the inside. What letters on the inside? Look at that. So suddenly, there are other images existing inside the letters themselves. Okay, so that's cute. But does it mean anything? Let's put it this way. When God created the world, so how did God do it? How did he do it? What, he had a big hammer and chisel? How did God create this magic called world? What did he do? All he did was, he spoke. And how do you speak? From your mouth. And how do you say mouth in Hebrew? There's a pei. What was the first letter that came out of the pei in creating this Torah? The bet. Bereshit bara. Out of the pei came the bet. The foundation of this world is to create a home for God, a place of holiness. Your home is meant to be a home just like the temple, a place of holiness. The creation was created by a pei, and the purpose of creation was to create a dwelling place for God in this world. And that's the bait, the bet. And I can go on for hours talking to you about the shapes inside and outside those letters. And the more you walk away from it and you look at it, suddenly there's different images and concepts just popping out at you. I'm just going to conclude this part with one last little piece, which I think is really fun. I'm sure you've all seen a magician before, right? Seen a magician? Huh? Okay. Right. What are the two famous words that all magicians use? And you guys knew that was Hebrew, right? It's Hebrew. It is. I'll prove it. Not only prove it, I'm going to show to you that it's real. Once again, how did God create this world? He's creating it through magic, right? Now, what are magicians trying to do, right? They're saying to you, hey, look over here, and they play with it over there, right? They're imitating the real thing, right? They'll say, okay, here it goes, and the chicken's under their yarmulke, right? Okay, and they have all these funny ways, the things up their sleeves, right? But they're trying to imitate real magic, right? Real magic that you could speak it. Could you imagine if I would turn around and say, I would like right here, right now to have a tree, and there comes a tree. Hey, you're good, right? If I could say, I would like right now to be in the Sahara Desert, and we're all there. Wow, if I could just speak it, that's unbelievable magic. So God made this world how? That's how he did it. He did it with his speaking. What are the first three words of Torah again? Bereshit. Come on. Bara. Elokim. Help me out. Let's go. Let's say it with me. Bereshit. Bara. Elokim. What does bara mean? Bereshit means in the beginning. Bara means what? Create. To create. God is creating. Remember, he's using magic, but he's creating. If you take the word bara and you add one letter with one vowel under it, you say abara means I create. How did God do it? God spoke. How do you say to speak in Hebrew? The word is diber. How would you say as I speak in Hebrew? You take the word diber, you add one letter with one vowel, and you say kedabra, that means as I speak. Abra kedabra means I create as I speak. That's real magic. And you could be anywhere around the world, and you could be watching a magician, you have no clue what the guy's saying, but at the end he'll say, Wabra-kadabra. They're imitating real magic. This is your Torah. Okay. Next. Any questions before I continue? That was just a little summary of what's going on here. Okay. Ultimately, the highest level of what a Sofer can do will be to write a Torah. It takes an entire year to write a Torah. We're talking about 8, 10, 12, sometimes 15 hours a day to write a Torah. We're using the quill. We're using the parchment, which is the skin of a kosher animal. We use ink that's made exclusively for the purpose of writing a Torah. And that's about it. There's no more dramatic pieces, excitement to it. You just sit there and you're copying a Torah from another Torah before you. Even though a scribe may know most of the Torah by heart, and I'm one of them, it's not because I'm a genius in any sense. I've read it and wrote it so many times, I've come to know it by heart. But even so, a scribe may not write out of memory. He has to write and copying it from a script before him. And that's it. That's the job. And then you get this Torah. Obviously, it's the thoughts, it's the laws, it's the inclusion of people in it. And now you have your Torah that you can use ritually, and you can make your blessing on it, and it's there for hundreds and hundreds of years. So what can go wrong with the Torah? Two main things can go wrong. One is that over time, assuming that the environment was not always 100% correct as far as Torahs go, whether too much humidity, whether it was too dry, letters can either start to fade, start going from black to brown, from brown to light brown, and then eventually fade to the point where you can't see it. That can make a Torah unfit, not kosher for ritual use. That's one problem. The other one is that over time, the black ink will dry out and start to crumble, and eventually the particles of the ink will pop off, and eventually the letters will break off completely and won't be there, again, making the Torah not kosher. So as a result, every so often, usually a Sofer will come around, visiting congregations wherever they may be, looking over these Torahs to try to perfect and correct those type of problems. And that's usually the set of problems that exist. Now, there are two other pieces that are important to note, and that is that the sheets, and soon I'll invite you to come and take a look, are actually stitched together with the sinew of the animal, and those little threads over time can come loose and snap. And when they snap, again, that will cause the sheets to separate, ultimately allowing much more uneven pressure on the parchment, and letters, again, can start cracking and peeling and so on. So it's important to have all the stitching correct. There's little reinforcement pieces of parchment on the top and the bottom of each seam that ensures that the stitching stays in place, and that is also very important. Sometimes over time, little tears develop on the parchment as a result of the parchment not being rolled correctly. And again, those tears can go into letters, causing other further damage. Now, if someone would stop and ask you, I'm sure there's a lot of things that can ensure a Torah lasts long. And in fact, if you take care of a Torah can last indefinitely. A Torah has no limit on how long it could last. The oldest scroll I personally worked on is a scroll out of Temple Emmanuel in Dallas. They have a scroll that's believed to be in the range of 750 years old. And you look at the scroll, and it's a bit frazzled on the top and the bottom, the parchment. You open it up, and the ink looks like it was written yesterday. Somehow, miraculously, through the change of times, it came through unscathed, and it's still there, beautifully there. So the truth is, it really has to do a lot with how we take care of it and how we maintain it. If someone would ask you, what is the number one ingredient that a Torah scroll needs for longevity, what would you say?
Dry air.
Believe it or not, it actually simply needs air. It needs to breathe. And therefore, if a Torah is just kept in the ark, rolled up, you are doing a disservice to your Torah. Yes, it doesn't happen overnight like that, but it's a slow progress of letter deterioration over time if you just simply leave a Torah. In fact, the example I like to give, that if you had a dog, a pet, your favorite dog, always with you, but then you're going on vacation for 3 months, and you can't take the dog with you. So you look around for someone who can watch your dog, right? So you go to this lady over here and says, can you watch my dog? She says, fine, I'll watch your dog for you. You give her the dog, you leave, she takes the dog, puts it in a box, locks it up, and okay. 3 months later, you come and say, where's my dog? Here, hold on a second, here's the key. Here's, oi. Did she watch your dog properly? If you get a dog to watch, you got to feed it, you got to walk it, you got to clean it. You can't just put it in a box. If someone had a Torah, and now you're giving it to someone else to watch, and now they are now the guardian. If they simply take the Torah, and you're going away for a year, right? Only a year, and you want someone reliable to watch your Torah. And they take the Torah, put it in the box, close it. And a year later, give it back to you, they have defaulted on their guardianship. They're giving you now a Torah, less quality, the condition of it has deteriorated, etc., because they just simply left it. According to Maimonides, who's written out all the elements of Jewish law, he clearly says that a Torah should be rolled once a month. You need to roll this, not to read it even, simply to roll it out from beginning to end, the next month from the end to the beginning, simply to allow the parchment, which is organic, it needs to breathe. It needs that air. So the truth is, if you think of it, if you're going to be one of those rolling the Torah, and the Torah is holy, what does it make you? A holy roller. And the name of our Torah Care program is called the Holy Rollers Torah Care Program. And it's a whole program that we share with you and how to look after your Torah. So whether you do it once a month, once every 2 months, but with the objective of every so often taking out your Torahs, open up a few tables, and you roll them out, and you roll them again, even if it's not the regular scroll that you're going to read every week from. But by doing so, you have now given your scrolls 30, 40, 50 years extra without doing anything, just simply allowing the scroll to breathe. So that is number one, what I recommend. When we leave, I'll be sharing some of the information with you. I'll be sending you a lot of the documents that relate to it and how to keep a whole report on the conditions of your Torahs. But surely to be able to roll them is a number one. Now, how you roll it is also very important. It's important that the scroll always stays even, because if it's rolled in an uneven way, that causes unnecessary pressure on the seams and on the letters, because the ink, here's another fascinating piece of information. When you're writing with your pen on the paper, the ink penetrates the paper. You cannot go and with a razor blade pull off the ink. You'd make a hole. It's not possible. And yet the ink on the parchment, it does not penetrate the parchment. It sits as little mounds on top of it. So as a result, the moment you take that parchment, if it's a little, like water paint almost, if you go like this to it, it would pop off. So in order to prevent letters from popping off, it's important to have the rolling on an equal basis, nice and even. I'm going to be sending you what we call Torah guards, which is just a little piece of wood as a roller to keep the parchment even at all times when it's being rolled, and that will help it a lot. Now, let me tell you just a little bit about the scrolls that you have here. Are you interested? Say yes. Yes. Okay, good. Now, I have good news and I have bad news. The bad news first. The bad news is, the whole day, Jeff kept on coming and popping and saying, do you have something like dramatic to say about the Torahs? Is there any big problems? Anything, tell me. The bad news is, I don't have any bad news to tell you. The good news is that it's actually going to take very little to, in a complete way, upkeep your Torahs. And I have to say, I personally am up to 10,200 scrolls that I have personally seen myself. So I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I visit congregations everywhere. And even when you have 2 or 3 scrolls, usually there'll be one that is the bad one. 7 scrolls, there's going to be a fortune of work that needs to be done. I don't know what you guys have done or what merit, on which merit you've deserved this, but your scrolls are unbelievable. And that really is a very big zchut. It's an honor. It's beautiful. And I can't go in my memory going and telling a congregation, the good news is, it's minor stuff. There's not one pasul Torah. That's unbelievable. That is really, and that's the statement. Yes, it needs cleaning, it needs stitching, there was some tear, that's wear and tear, maintenance, fine. But problematic where you have, the Rose Medical Center down in, so we restored, they had a Holocaust scroll there. That scroll, to fix it, they spent $35,000 to fix it. It was full, it has a history, and it was worth every moment and every penny because it was that special, because of where it came from and whatever. But the whole thing with the letters were just like falling off. We practically rewrote that scroll.
Part of it is climate.
You know what? I've seen scrolls in all places. And this is not the case. The case is that often you'll have scrolls over time. And you're not talking about scrolls that are, 10, 20, 30 years. You're talking about scrolls that are 50 and 70 and 95 and 100. You're talking about scrolls that have been around. And surely there's a lot of dirt on it. So it's not that you're just sitting perfect pretty. And there are tears and a lot of seams came apart. But the ink was and they're not from the same place. You have scrolls from Germany, Poland, you have Russia, and you have Israel, and Morocco. How's that? So, and you're going to be getting a report of each of your scrolls. They have numbers on them now, so you'll be able to reference my documents and information to your scrolls. They'll have photos of it, so you'll be able to compare it back to the scrolls themselves. But what's most important is that while all the scrolls are all from different places, it was so unique to see on an equal basis. They all survived in somewhat of a similar way, that it was only minor restoration that's necessary. So if and when you decide to go and fix the minor pieces, it's really not a major undertaking. Again, many times a scroll will need $5,000 and $10,000 and $8,000, and this is $800, $400, $1,200. It's unbelievable. Little minor things, which is great. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to draw for you a little bit a comparison, and then you can come up and take a look as well of the different styles of letters, because there are two distinctive types of writing in Torah. The one is Ashkenaz, and the other one is Sephardic. Okay? Are you all familiar with those two terminologies? Are you?
Yes.
Ashkenazi are usually Jews that came from Eastern Europe. Sephardi are Jews that came from North Africa, Arab countries, and so on. And while all the words in the Torah are absolutely equally the same, the style of the letters has differed, slightly different. Within the Ashkenazi script and within the Sephardi script, now the branches break out into many other styles. So there are scripts that are distinctive Polish. You go and look at a German Torah, it looks so different. Look at a Russian Torah, forget it. Romanian, did I say? Czechoslovakian. Suddenly there are different types of scripts that over hundreds and hundreds of years became very well known as scripts belonging to those types of Jews that came from certain parts of the world. And likewise, you have Moroccan Torahs, you have Iraqi Torahs, Yemenite Torahs, and so on. Now, some of the clear distinctions between the two types of scripts would be in the following. I'm going to show you a few letters to be able to see the difference. The first letter, which always is what we look at first because it's the most distinctive letter to see the difference, would be the letter Shin. So when you have the letter Shin, so an Ashkenazi Shin would look like this. Okay? With the focus on this bottom part. It comes, all three heads come into one point on the bottom. While a Sephardi Shin will have a base that's flat. Sometimes it'll even be round. So whenever you look at a Torah, and you will either see a flat base or a point base, that will be able to immediately tell you, is it a Sephardic Torah or is it an Ashkenazi Torah? One of the other letters actually will be the letter Lamed. This is the Ashkenazi Lamed, obviously with the two crowns, while the Sephardic Lamed will be like this. Again, this time it has a completely round base on the bottom, while the Sephardic one will come down into a point. Now, yes, go ahead.
How can you maintain the imagery, the secondary imagery, if the letters are allowed to vary that much? That would seem important.
Absolutely. But what's fascinating is that in part almost becomes one of the reasons for the change. In other words, what is being shown with a Torah that's Sephardic, the images that we're talking about, actually on a certain level will differ. Because again, we're not just talking about physical images. We're talking about images that have other significant meanings other than the actual just shapes by themselves. But that is why there is, on a spiritual note, one goes into the whole concept of the difference between an Ashkenazi and a Sephardi, and a lot of the minhagim and customs that one does, because we're trying to reach out, if you will, on a spiritual level, which can go into many, many heavens and so on, to identify different elements within that power, if you will. So while all the letters will always be there, the change in shape actually is derived because of what they feel would have been more of the accurate explanation to what that purpose of those shapes were meant to be. And that's what it is. So it's not just a face or a name or a letter, but it's much greater concepts, if you will. Someone else raised their hand I didn't see? Okay, yeah, that was a good question. Okay. One other letter, and this actually would apply to many of the actual letters. You take the letter, whether it'll be the letter bet. So the letter bet, Ashkenaz, has a point here. While the letter bet in Sephard, in the Sephardi one, it goes like this. It's actually round on top. And so it will happen now that many of the letters that have points on the right, when it comes to the Sephardi, it'll be round. So, for example, the Taf in the Ashkenaz will be like a Dalet. And while the Sephardi, it'll be like this. Okay. If you want to come up, I'd like to show you some things quickly. Anyone wants to come around, you get to come and see it. And for those who are in the secondary line, I never leave home without it. Here is my first mezuzah. And you're more than welcome to try to see. I mean, it's a beautiful mezuzah. And try to see if you can spot the mistake. Here it is. I'll give you a hint. It's within the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. In the top 6 lines, anyone who's interested. Okay. Okay. So over here, this one is going to be a Sephardi scroll. This one is actually from Morocco. I'm going to bring this over to you here so you can see it better. So I know you're upside down, but if you start looking here at the shins, you see how the shins are flat?
Yes.
Okay? And take a look at the lamed. You see that? Okay. Let's go ahead and let's see, where's the taf? No, come on.
Do you want the yod?
No, there's good. You see there's a taf. There's a taf. Okay, so it's not a dalet, it's like a resh. Okay? Now let's go and look at an Ashkenazi Torah. And now you'll see, here's the shin. You see the shin with all the points? Okay? Let's go ahead and look at the lamed. You see the lameds have completely the surrounded bottom. And if you look at the taf, it's like a dalet, not a resh. You see that? Okay. Now, by the way, here you can see, here's some of the dirt. You see that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, if you give me a minute, I'm going to show you some magic. Yeah. Okay. Now, remember, when one wants to clean Torah, you have to be careful of 2 things. One, if you have something that you're going to erase and it's going to be too harsh, you're going to pull off the letters. And if it's too soft, it won't do anything, right? So now watch. You watching? Look at that. You see that? Look at that.
What kind of material?
Aha, that's my magic. No, it's actually a unique, it's an artist type of eraser. It's a rubber. And this is the one that actually works. And that's it.
How much variation is there in the inks around the world? Is it a formula that's been passed down for thousands of years?
So what happens about the ink, which is actually fascinating in itself, is that you can today Google kosher ink. And you'll get the ingredients. It has copper sulfate, gum arabic, it has gold nuts, it has ashes of different plants, it even has honey. Honey is what allows the letters to shine. But the trick is not the ingredients. The trick is the quantities of these ingredients and how you mix it. And that is a secret that's only known to a few families, and I'm not one of them.
Wow.
And whenever we want to get ink, we have to get it from one of these sources. And I sometimes dilute it or make it thicker according to my particular needs. But the actual formula of how you mix it, and it's made obviously for the purpose of writing Torahs only.
How long does it take to dry?
Depends obviously on the environment, but it'll take 2 to 5 minutes at the most.
Oh, really?
Yeah, fairly quickly.
How do you dilute it?
Well, we would dilute it usually with a different type of formula of water, vinegar, and a bit of honey. That's usually and again, we have different containers that have different consistencies of those. And again, it's a lot of testing and different types of parchment and so on.
Any particular kind of honey?
No, bees honey. Just regular.
I mean, well, no, I knew
No,
it was bees,
yeah,
honey,
I
but
mean-
I meant the flowers that they got the honey
I
from.
wouldn't know that. No, that I'm not sure about. That's,
Why not?
yeah.
Do you use a quill?
Oh, only a quill. Yeah. Usually, if you're bringing me over my feather right over there. Okay. So this is a turkey feather. You can use a feather from any kosher bird. Okay, so that's chicken, duck, goose, whatever. But we use turkey feathers simply. They are the largest ones, and they're the most sturdy as well. So I'm able to cut them into the various sizes and shapes that I need to be able to write. So this is it.
How many
This one.
feathers would it take?
To write a whole scroll, you probably need about 20, give or take, yeah. Now, what's interesting, I want to show you another interesting thing that can cause problems, and also on other levels, will be something that what we call the glazing. All of your Torahs here are also unified in the following. They all are glazed. Now, what do I mean by that? Today, all new Torahs are not glazed. So any scroll, whether it's Ashkenazic or Sephardic, they will not be glazed. In fact, for the past 40 years or so, Torahs have not been written on glazed parchment. Now, what is glazed, and why don't they use it anymore? And all these are glazed. First of all, to identify it, these are cow skin. Torahs are made out of cow skin. Have you ever seen a cow that looks white like this? No. So how to get white? So what they do is after the parchment has been after the skin has been made into parchment, they would coat the back of the parchment, in most cases, with what they call in Hebrew like a whitewash, to strengthen it. And also what they were thinking was to prevent it from being transparent. Now, what was going on over the last 100 years or so, that's when it was primarily being done, is that to make parchment, you take the skin from the cow, it could take anything between 3 to 5 months to process that skin and transform it into a piece of parchment. Now that's a long time and a big investment to spend to get a little piece of parchment. So back in Europe, primarily in Poland, what they started doing was they came up with a trick. They were able to slice it as technology was coming through, and with knives and different sharp material, and they were able to get the parchment so thin very quickly without having to stretch it. The problem was it became transparent to the point where you almost couldn't read it from it, because wherever you would put it, you would be seeing whatever's under it. So in order to prevent that transparency, they coated it with this white paint, and also in the belief that that would hold it and make it stronger. What they did not realize, two things, that when you put that white paint on it, you actually more than doubled the weight of the Torah. Today, you ready for this one? These scrolls, by the way, are weighing, I think the lightest scroll you have is about 25 pounds. They're here 30. I think one of them is close to 40. I mean, we're talking about heavy. These are heavy Torah.
The oldest one.
I know. Today, the same size Torahs are going to weigh 10, 9, even 8 pounds. All the new Torahs we've been writing for years now, same size, 8, 9 pounds. That's it. Why? Number one, the coat of paint is not there. That already takes care of that. Now, Sephardim took that coat of paint concept one step further. Ashkenazi, in those days, were doing the coat of paint on the back. While the inside was not really coated, it was more just more to the color, the skin of the animal on the inside. Sephardim, they would go ahead and coat put the coat of paint on the inside. And actually, if you feel it, you can go ahead, not the letters, but if you want to touch the parchment, anyone around, go and touch this one, and then touch this one, and you'll feel the soft. This is actually with the paint. Go ahead. You definitely may do so. You're absolutely allowed to.
I didn't think so.
Oh, wow.
Let me add a point here, since I hear some hesitation about people touching Torah without a yad.
Right.
Okay? And this is on camera, so I'm being recorded. It does not say anywhere that you're not allowed to touch a Torah. It doesn't say it anywhere. It does not exist. You are permitted to touch Torah. So, hey, but Rabbi, why do we always have to use the yad and all that? Very simple. It's based on the concept, what we call in Hebrew, a gader. A gader means a fence. If you have a swimming pool, what's the first thing you're supposed to put around the pool? A fence. Why? What? When you put the fence up, are you trying to say that no one's allowed to swim? No. We're saying that if you're 2 years old or if you're drunk, you shouldn't be in the pool area. But if you're older than 2 and you know how to swim, go and swim. But the fence is to prevent those who don't know how. When it comes to touching Torah, you are allowed to, but surely within reason you have to know how to as well. So therefore, because we don't want to start saying, you know how, you don't know, you do, you don't, we say, you know what, let's make life easy. If you want to touch Torah, use a yad. Nice and easy. It's primarily referring to the letters, that you shouldn't touch the letters with your hands and smear it and the oils, etc. But to touch the parchment, by all means. In fact, we have a saying, only when you touch the Torah is the Torah going to touch you. And so it's very special to touch Torah and to kiss Torah and to feel close to Torah. So as you will see here, this is your chance. You can touch the Torah, and here the Torah is actually much smoother because of the paint, the glazing that was on it.
Now, I have a good question.
Go, I love good questions. I was waiting for some good ones.
So now, parchment,
Yeah.
there can't be, I would have to assume that you're only limited to a few different places to obtain your parchment.
There's only a few places in Israel that make them. Yep. There's only a few places in Israel that actually have what they call like a klaf macher. It's like a factory for making parchment.
So are they have they brought the cost up? Because it seems...
No, the price has been more or less the same almost ever since.
And did they send it to you on a scroll? Or just who puts it together?
Well, I sew them when I write scrolls, I sew them together.
So then the other big question would, is it a certain amount of pages that have to be...
Traditionally, on a standard Torah today, I can throw the question at you and make it fun. How many cows does it take? Do you need, right? Okay? And the answer goes that there are basically 4 columns in every sheet. There are 248 columns. 3 sheets have 3 columns. How many cows? Okay. The answer is 62 sheets. That's how many sheets there are in a Torah.
How many letters?
Okay. How many letters? 304,508 exactly.
Say that again, how many?
304,508.
Wow.
There you go.
And over a year, that's how many letters a day?
Well, some are bigger, some are smaller, whatever, but yeah.
Did you say an average day you must do
About 1.5. Sometimes if I'm quick, I can get 2.
1,000?
Well, I'm talking about columns, because every column is different. Yeah.
Is there a certain breed of cow that the...
No.
No, it's any cow will do.
I will add one more point, and maybe with this I will finish unless there's any questions. I have been asked this question. You mean that you're allowed to kill a cow to write a Torah? And the answer goes as follows. That would be a sacrilege. That would be one of the worst sins, would be to take the life of anyone, let alone a cow, and for the purpose of writing a Torah. So if there was a city of 100,000 Jews, and they did not have a Torah, and they had hundreds of cows, you would be prohibited from killing a cow because you want to write a Torah. If the cow died naturally, or if it was shechted, slaughtered for the purpose of eating, then you may take the skin and use it for the purpose of writing a Torah. But you may never take the life of anything, even to write a Torah. Thank you very much. I hope you all enjoyed. Okay, good. Okay. Okay. And I was just warming up, guys.
We wouldn't try to clean the Torah dirt.
I'm not going to.
We have no need to,
Well, the cleaning probably would be something that I might do when I come in next time.
Yeah.
The cleaning does not necessarily make it not kosher. It's often when there's 2 types of dirt. There's going to be white dirt and black dirt. it's like a white cloud of dirt or a
Yeah.
black cloud of dirt. The white cloud of dirt is usually the residue of the white paint.
Yeah.
The black cloud is the more dangerous one because that's usually a sign that the letters have started to crumble. And the dust particles from the ink is starting to spread. And usually after you clean that, now you're going to start seeing that some of the letters have cracked and peeled and sometimes have even broken off. And then you'll need to fix it. But
Do you
it's
know
all
which,
part-
of all these, how the oldest one might be?
Your oldest scroll actually is your Edelman. Is that what it's called? Edelman, right? That's it's about a good 150. It's a good 150 years old.
And they must have brought them over in trunks, or
This was
nobody
brought
knows?
here in 1888.
Yeah. Yep.
They first settled, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It was
And Shana Tova to all of you. Shana Tova.
You said
Had
you
to do
told
a,
us what countries these came from.
I know. Because there's different styles. Each time when you have a letter that it depends on the legs, it can be this style. If it comes, and each one within the countries had different styles of letters, and that's how you identified it.
Did they have you look at our Megillah?
No, they did not.
filled out the form.
Okay. If you don't mind staying here like about another probably 20 to 30, because I have a conference call that starts in 2.
I will stay, and
Okay, I'll take a look at it quickly, sure.
I appreciate it. And
Okay.
since you got to go, for insurance purposes.
Yes.
What value?
On each of the documents, you will have a value of each of the scrolls. I replace.
Would you say
Oh,
they're
absolutely.
average about 35,000?
Give or take. There's some less. There are some more.
Okay.
You have one Torah that's really a beautiful scroll. It's like in that mid-40s. In other words, it's a replacement. If you had to get today, go get a scribe that can write that quality, you'll be paying just shy of 45,000. It's a beautiful,
How much
beautiful
are
scroll.
yours usually when you sell them?
Well, I mean, it's not what is. Oh, I'm not writing anymore.
Okay.
Because to write a Torah, you can do nothing but writing.
Got it. Yeah.
The last time I wrote was a bunch of years ago. I've written 17 scrolls. But now I do more of the teaching and the
Yeah,
sharing.
I
and,
was
you know,
thinking you could
you can't
only
do
do
both.
20 years.
You can't, yeah.
Have you done any since Pueblo?
No.
Wow.
No, it's been a while.
So,
Yeah, you're like Van
Yeah.
Gogh now.
That was one of my last ones, right. Okay, I'm going to get a phone call here going.
There's a room
27.
if you want to.
Okay.
you got a certificate of the letters in your office? That was one of like those last one that he wrote.
Yeah, that was a special one.
I gotta see Marv and see what he'll give me for it.